Hey everybody, how are you? I am Jenn Karsner, your host today for today's webinar, and I'm super excited to be here with you guys. First and foremost, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today and taking a moment out of your busy schedules to be here with us. We have an extremely value-packed webinar for you that we're going to be talking to some pretty brilliant minds on. But before we get started, I wanted to first take a moment to take this Veterans Day to celebrate and honor all military veterans for their patriotism, love of your country, sacrifice, and willingness to serve in the military today and every day. So thank you guys so much for that. It means so much to us here at LOCALiQ, and I know the rest of the country and all of the attendees on the call definitely appreciate you as well. So thank you guys so much for that. Let me first introduce you, if you don't know already, who LOCALiQ is and what it is that we do. So we know that a lot has changed since you first set your goals in 2020, right? We know this. Lots has changed. But just because you might have experienced a couple setbacks doesn't necessarily mean that you can't still make a full recovery here. And what LOCALiQ is we're the digital marketing experts amongst communities. And we have deep roots within over 260 communities across the country. And it's our passion, really and truthfully, to help local businesses and communities grow. And what's really incredible about LOCALiQ is we have the ability to uniquely engage local audiences, industry-leading technology, deep digital marketing expertise, and insights from over 300,000 clients across the United States. So we're really excited to be able to share and to host these webinars and invite some of our speakers and staff members on to share insights with you that can really help you set yourself up for success. So before we get started, I wanted to just go over just a couple housekeeping things. Right? So if you haven't been on one of my webinars before, I typically like to have them pretty involved. So you can see here we have the chat. I'm going to ask you guys to utilize that pretty frequently, and we're going to answer as many questions as we can. But in order for everybody to see your questions, you need to click this button right here, and you need to select all panelists and attendees. If you just have it on panelists, we're going to be the only ones that can see your questions, and we'd love for you to share your feedback and share your insights with everyone else. So if you could take 1 second to switch your chat box to panelists and attendees, and then I'd love for you guys to put who you are and where you're from in the country. So take a second, let me see where everybody is, where you're coming from. Memphis, Tennessee, Michigan, Florida, love it. Awesome. Great, I love it. Columbus, Ohio. Oh my gosh, it's coming in so quick. You guys are amazing. And that is exactly what we're looking for. So when we ask some questions, or if you have a question, feel free to drop it in the chat box. If we don't get to it on the call today, we will be sure to reach out to you after the call and answer as many questions as we can, okay? So don't be shy to drop your feedback and information in there. This is an open, sharing, caring, loving environment, so there are no bad questions, wrong questions, answers, all of that good stuff. Also, at the end of this webinar, every single person on here will also be receiving a recording of the webinar along with a digital workbook that you can take back to your team, work through, and help to utilize to set your plan for 2021. It's an interactive workbook, so we're really excited about that, and you'll be receiving that through an email after the webinar as well. So then what we'll do at the very end is we'll bring the event full circle, and hopefully you'll be able to walk away with this soundproof strategy to recharge your business, get you guys back on top. And if you guys are already working through that 2021 strategy, hopefully this will just help you kind of push it over the edge, and we'll go from there. So let's go ahead and get started. So today we're going to be talking all about branding, your DNA of your business, the science of storytelling, and advertising in a digital world. So let's go ahead and dive right in. So Again, I'm Jenn Karsner. I'll be your host and your first speaker today. So let's talk a little bit about branding DNA and what that means and what that means for our businesses, right? So every business has DNA that makes up their business, right? Just like in people, we all have DNA that makes us up, right? We have our certain hair color, our eye color, our personality traits. Well, your business has those same traits as well. And so we're going to dive into what that means and how that can help set your business up for success and how you can really utilize that information to tell your brand story. So facts, right? I love facts. And the first one is that 3.5 billion people in the world own a toothbrush. Now you're probably sitting here wondering why I'm talking about why people own toothbrushes. Well, what's interesting about that stat is that 3.5 billion people in the world may own toothbrushes, but 3.7 billion people in the world own a phone. So let's just let that sink in. That means that more people own phones than they are willing to have dental hygiene. So maybe don't get as close to your neighbors as they say, right? Keeping that 6 foot distance. But that also means that people are constantly utilizing technology and they're constantly on the phone, right? So if we have 3.7 billion people owning a phone, that means that technology is at the forefront of their fingertips, even more so than their digital hygiene, right? And another thing about that is that it takes an average person about 10 pieces of content before actually purchasing. So not only are they using that phone all of the time and they're staying connected 24/7 24/7 out of the day, right? But it's also they're seeing content on a regular basis. So they're looking for new information, new information, new information all the time before they're actually making that final purchase decision. But what's even more crazy about this is that because they are constantly seeing that content, because they're constantly on their phones, even more so than they do brush their teeth, it takes a goldfish 9 seconds to keep its attention span. That's 1 second longer than a human. So the average human has an 8 second attention span. So we're 1 second below a goldfish. So we have to be able to entertain people or grasp their attention within that content within the first 8 seconds of them even seeing it. So you're probably wondering, like, what does this mean, Jen? What does this have to do with what we're talking about today? Well, if we're all online, if we're all placing content out there as digital marketers and advertisers, and we need to keep people's attention within the first 8 seconds, the biggest question here is how do you stand out in that sea of sameness? How do you get your message out there? How do you build rapport with people in 8 seconds? So much so that it makes them enticed to want to click on that ad or read more information or scroll over to the next post, right? It's our natural tendency to want to see more and ask for more, and we want it now and we want it then and we want it here. But as advertisers, if we're always trying to do the same thing as everybody else, which is put our business out there, talk about how great we are, compare ourselves to our competitors, well, we're not really standing out amongst the rest. So that's where your brand story really comes into play. And what happens is that research really reveals that consumers perceive the same types of personality characteristics in your brand as they do in humans, right? So it's building that human connection. And the way that you're going to develop yourself and your business and how you can develop your marketing strategy really kind of is set and defined by those personality characteristics that make up your business and your brand. And that's exactly how you're going to stand out in a sea of sameness. Okay, because what we have a tendency to do as marketers is we have a tendency to shout out all the best parts of us. I like to often use the analogy, it's kind of like online dating. For those of you that have done it, it's definitely an interesting challenge now during a pandemic. But it's kind of like that, right? You have a dating profile, you have your best picture on there, or maybe a couple of your best pictures. You are shouting out that you're a doctor and you're tall and you're good looking and you love dogs. And it's like this walking billboard for yourself, right? Well, marketers do the same thing. We're constantly talking about the best parts of us. Oh, we are the best bank and we offer the best prices and we have the biggest discounts. But people don't really connect with things like that. They connect with more of those personality traits and that humanization. And you'll get this diagram that you're seeing up on the screen now in that workbook, so you guys can read through it. But this talks a lot about, what attracts people to buy from you in certain brands over the next one. And what you'll see here is most of it, actually all of it, has nothing to do with you shouting out all of the best parts of you, right? It's about building that human connection and connecting to one another. So how do you do that? Well, we do that through what I like to call your brand's DNA. And what makes up your brand's DNA? Well, it's your purpose, it's your perspectives, your individualization, your recognition. It's a combination of what your company stands for, the lens through which your customers view you, and what sets you apart from your competition, and honestly, what you want to be known for in the marketplace. And once you have this nailed down, it's actually going to inform how you show up in the world. And this is the first step that a lot of companies tend to skip over, or we don't reevaluate it enough, right? So you may already know what your company's purpose is, or your perspective, or how you want your company to look creatively, right? But we don't often evaluate that and evolve it as times change. So this really is going to set the stage, and it's going to develop the foundation that allows you to tell that story in a meaningful, connective way. So this is everything from the language that you use, how you deal with your customers, and what does that customer journey even look like? Your visual identities, your logos, your colors, your contents, how employees feel working with you, and the value that you bring to your brand, and of course, all of the content and the messaging that you share. So this is a really prominent part of your business, and it's really about diving into that foundation. When you guys receive the workbook later today, what you'll see in there is it's going to have a section that you can actually work through this with your team and reevaluate your brand's brand DNA. So great brand storytelling, right? It fosters a connection between the brand and its audience. It's communicating the truth, the purpose, the vision, and values of the brand through the content that you have, right? So we know that it's competitive out there. People are searching more than they've searched ever before. We have more people on the internet. We're constantly overwhelmed by how many ads we see every single day. I know just scrolling through Instagram, every 3 posts, it's going to be an ad. And how do we determine what that ad is? Well, it's scary for us, right? Because things just start to pop up, and that's just what search marketing is. But it's really great for marketers. So how do you become one of those people that's your ads are constantly being seen? Well, you want to foster that emotional connection. And what research has really showed us recently is that 95% of purchase decisions are made through that emotional connection. So being able to really tell your story is what's going to set you apart from your competition. And that's why we have deemed storytelling a means of income and a revenue driving stream for businesses in 2021. You can see up here on the screen that, telling your story has a big effect. So I'd love to ask you guys, can you guys recall a brand that you feel an emotional connection with and do business with because of how the brand makes you feel? Let me have you guys drop that in the chat. I want to hear a couple businesses that you do business with on a regular basis. Ooh, Lush Cosmetics, I love them too. Kraft cheese, Kraft cheese. Okay, these are good. These are good. IHOP, okay. Chick-fil-A, okay. I know we have some fans of Chick-fil-A here for sure. Awesome. And can you guys tell me just a couple, like one reason why you feel connected to those brands? Like what makes you use them? I know you said it's an emotional driver, but which emotional driver is it? If you can name it, great. If not, no worries. Their products, awesome. They make you feel happy. Cool. It tastes the best. Awesome. Customer service is huge. Innovation, shared values. Good. Exactly. And these are all of the qualities that we expect people to feel when they feel that emotional connection, right? So let's talk a little bit about how we develop that story and how we build that emotional connection. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to introduce you guys to two brilliant people that I just love dearly, who are so intelligent, from our Get Creative team, Tiffanie Johnson and Chris Sweigart. And we're going to talk with them today all about the science of storytelling. Hey guys, how are ya?
Good, how are you? Thank you for having us.
Good. Thanks for being on. Can you guys do me a favor before we get into our content and all of the great information that we're going to talk about today? Can you guys tell everyone on the call just a little bit about what Get Creative is and what it is that your teams do on a daily basis so that they can better understand the landscape?
Sure, I'll start. So hello everyone, I'm Tiffanie. I'm Director of Content Operations for Get Creative, which is USA Today Network's in-house content studio, and we specialize in creating, curating, and distributing stories for LOCALiQ. And we partner with businesses, big, small, and everywhere in between, to tell their stories. I lead the business. I love saying that because it's really true. We work from the biggest brands, like the Walmarts of the world, to just a dentist in Cincinnati, which is cool. I lead the business side, where I have a team of program managers, product experts, and social media specialists who are responsible for the management, promotion, and performance of campaigns. And I am partners in crime with Chris Sweigart.
Hey everybody, I'm Chris. I'm the creative director for the team. I have a team of, we call them content strategists, video producers, designers, focused on producing content that gets published on the websites of the USA Today Network, our local websites, and usatoday.com. That's produced in partnership with our advertising partners. So many of us on the creative team have journalism backgrounds. Actually, Tiffanie also has a journalism background. And we really bring that journalistic approach to storytelling that fits really nicely on our platforms. So excited about the opportunity to, at some point a few years ago in my career, transition from journalism to helping brands tell their stories. It's been a very exciting and fun challenge.
Awesome. Thank you guys so much for being on the call today. I'm super excited to have you. And I know we did a lot of research and had tons of conversations prior to us hosting the webinar today. And we talked a lot about, what it is that people most want to see and hear. And there's some research out there that the Ohio State University did that suggests that, what people most want to see and hear are stories about everyday people. And when I was talking to Chris and Tiffanie about this slide right here, it kind of was a funny conversation per usual. We're always kind of joking around, right? And it was kind of like, is it as easy as just telling stories about everyday or regular people? Like, what does that even mean? Is it just us putting some images of people up there and having a good headline, Chris? Is it, doing a video where people are in the video? Like, it's not just about products and things. What is it about? Is it always just as easy as quote unquote regular people?
No, at least not in my opinion. I think this slide is really interesting on a couple of levels, because on the surface, it would these results would lead you to believe that, of course, if I just tell stories about regular people, that's really going to resonate with an audience. But it's interesting that other kinds of people are also named here. Customers, employees, the CEO and founder of a company. I think in many senses, to me, those people are regular people too, maybe debatably. And all of our CEOs and founders, I've had a few in the past that maybe weren't so regular, but all kidding aside, on some level, CEO, founders, employees, customers, those are all regular people too. And and I think really what the takeaway from this slide, or the takeaway from this study or these results, is that it's really sort of developing a sense of empathy in your storytelling and understanding your audience and who you're trying to talk to. And where they are and what their needs are. And I think if you can develop that empathy and really speak to people as regular people, not as acquisitions to be made as clients, you can talk to them about things like products and services. You can talk to them about your CEO. You can talk to them about your employees, because you're bringing relevance and context in the storytelling that you're trying to tell.
Yeah, so you're having more than just it's more than just putting content out there to put content out there because a blog that you read says that you should be putting 10 pieces of content out a day, right? There's a strategy to it. There's a method to the madness. You want to have purpose behind what you're doing, and you want to also understand that not every single person out there is your customer, right? And you want to be focusing on that specific target audience that is going to fuel your business and propel it in the right direction. And I know that you guys have really developed a system that's very strategic, almost what I like to call scientific, right? And it's really the science behind telling that story. So can you talk a little bit about what these principles are that you guys kind of follow as you're creating storytelling for clients that you work with on a regular basis?
Yeah, Jen, you're right. It's definitely an art meets science, or science meets art approach that we have at Get Creative, and how we bring these stories to life. And a lot of it was looking internally as well. What are the platforms that our audience is coming to us on? How are they engaging with us? What is our empathy towards our audience, and understanding where they're coming to us? And obviously, as a large group of news and information websites, we need to present our content that we're creating for our advertisers in that same context. So we've developed sort of this triumvirate of principles that we have for every campaign that we work on, every series of content that we produce with an advertiser, of inform, engage, connect. Number one, we want to inform people. We want to give them value. This is really all about using content to put the audience's needs first, not necessarily the advertiser or our need first. So give something to the audience that's relevant, that is enriching their lives. Then once we're giving them information, we have the opportunity to engage them. Do we do that with storytelling that is very narrative in focus, very character driven in focus, perhaps with video that elicits an emotion? Or are we really trying to present the audience with actionable information about what they should do for Thanksgiving? Here's a quick list of all the things to remember to get at the grocery store. Those are both different types of storytellings that can engage people in different ways. So really thinking about what our objectives are. And if we're informing people and we're engaging them well, then we have an opportunity to connect them. And that's really kind of the third phase in the process. And that's connecting the audience to the advertiser, and the advertiser to the audience, right? So what action do we want people to take? Do we want them to just be more generally aware of the brand? Do we want them to increase a consideration for the brand in their connection? Or do we want them to actually take some kind of connection with the advertiser, some kind of action with the advertiser, buy a product, sign up for an email, any of those kinds of things. So I think what's interesting about these three things is not only are they principles, and if we do all three of these things well, then generally we're pretty certain that we're going to have a successful campaign, but these also follow the sort of user journey through content as well, right? They want to get something, they want to engage with the brand, and then we want to connect them with the brand.
I love that. And it's really like something that you guys always talk about is creating a need for the content, right? And how we kind of mentioned, like, not just throwing content out there, but creating that need, and what is the goal of what you guys are trying to do. And that's kind of where all three of these kind of fall into place. And I think that it's important, right? So it's having that value, the value of quality. So engaging content, it can serve as a vehicle to connect brands to their target audience, but there's also a lot of noise out there, right? So when consumers are overwhelmed with advertising and messaging, how can businesses cut through that noise with their content?
Yeah, so it's true. And you talked about it earlier too. Audiences and consumers have become really hyper aware of advertising in general. And for content, they're really getting smarter and more intentional about the content they want to engage with. And that can be a challenge, finding the right products, the right platforms, and the right messaging for marketers. But that's where the value of quality comes in, the quality content and the quality audience. And I think of it as a formula, as you see in this slide. But for like platforms like us on the USA Today Network, we have an established readership and viewership that allows us to understand our audience needs, like what information they want, how they consume content, as Chris spoke to. And that really helps us develop quality branded content that serves them. So with the formula being quality content plus quality audiences, you give that quality audience the quality content, something they actually want to read or watch. You give them a reason to stay, you get them to stick around, and that's what leads to the engagement, which ultimately drives brand value and impact.
Yeah, and I know like a lot of local business owners when we were traveling before and doing events all over the country, something that I would often hear back in the day, which kind of seems like back in the day now, right? Back in 2019, we used to do that. I would hear a lot, you know, like, oh, well, I'm not like a really big brand, or, oh, I'm just a flooring company or a roofing company, or I just sell like garage door openers, you know, and often we would hear discouragement in their voices on like, well, how do I tell my brand story, and how do I get that out there, and how do I build a relationship and connect with people? I just sell like new carpet, right? And so I would love to challenge you guys, you know, to give just a little piece of advice to our local business owners that maybe do feel that way in a sense. Is it possible for somebody who just sells that carpet, you know, to have their brand voice heard through, you know, branded content and storytelling?
Yeah, so absolutely. You know, there was I can't remember the reporter now. There's a CBS News reporter who had a series called Everyone Has a Story. And he would really just kind of find seemingly random people and tell their story. And it was really remarkable what he was able to uncover about regular people. Um, Going back to that first slide. So I think in the same sense, every brand has a story, and all of those stories really do matter. Ironically enough, before I joined this meeting with you guys today, I was on a call as we were developing a content strategy for a company that sells gutters.
Oh my gosh.
Right. So it's a really fun exercise for our team. So as a plug, of course, you know, our team and the various teams at LOCALiQ, there's a lot of creative folks on our side who can help you start to discover what that story is. But a lot of times I've recognized the brands and advertisers that we work with already have all of the things that they need to do a lot of this work on their own. And when I 2019, when we were traveling more, I was always really excited to go visit a lot of our local advertisers because as you go into their offices, you go into their stores, you go into their operations, you start to get a sense from them of what is important to them and what their story is. And I think a lot of times owners, founders, managers within organizations spend a lot of time thinking about how they tell their story to their employees, how they want their employees to act in the community, how they want their employees to treat customers, what their inspiring mission is, and a lot of that stuff is like literally written on the walls, and a lot of those things are very unique. And a lot of times those are the first things that can help you start to identify what your story is. So taking that as a starting point, your first audience was your employees, thinking about internally, how are we marketing ourselves? But think about how you might be able to market yourself externally using a lot of those principles. And that's really cool because that's authentically you, authentically your brand being reflected. Right. And I think, you know, there's a question in there about people being more mindful about advertisers or advertising being out there and whether audiences are reluctant to engage. And I think we're all interested in engaging with brands, but we want to engage with brands in an authentic way that are representing themselves authentically.
Yeah, and that's where the value add is, right? Mm-hmm. It's right there in what you've already done. It's the work that you put into your, what I call your brand's DNA, right? What's making up your brand and who you are and what your company is. So how does branded content engagement translate for more of like your lower funnel objectives?
So here's the truth. We're telling the truth. Well, branded content can help drive lower funnel action, but it's particularly well suited for upper and middle funnel objectives, and that's where it really thrives. And so we should let it work where it's, you know, built to thrive, changing perception, building consideration, creating interest. But that being said, you know, combining branded content with additional tactics such as search, social, and display generally leads to an overall strategy that's most effective. And because we know, like through Ipsos and other brand lift studies, that content engagement leads to brand lift, branded content really is critical for truly effective full funnel strategies. And it's a powerful way to still contribute and maximize the advertiser's marketing.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I think that making sure that everything comes full circle and comes full funnel and you're hitting all of those touch points, because back to that first status quo that I had, right? 10 pieces of content before somebody makes a purchasing decision. If you're not showing up in all of those places, if the funnel of your marketing isn't fully complete, then the chances of you obtaining or acquiring that new customer may be a lot lower, right? Or it may be a lot longer of a process. So in order to meet people where they are, which is that 8 seconds, you know, a little bit shorter than a goldfish, we have to really have those value. We have to have the perception, the consideration, and we have to come full circle. So it's probably easier said than done, right? I'm assuming. So how do you implement branded content program in a way that ensures that it's set up for success? How do you guys see that working together?
Yeah, so, you know, telling the story is one thing and super important, but actually getting that story in front of the right audience and making sure readers engage, as we've been talking about, is just as important, because that's how we see the results. So when it comes to operationalizing the strategy, I think of it in a framework of 3 Ps, because we think of everything in threes, of course: inform, engage, connect, promotion, performance, improve. And, you know, we talk about content really being the vehicle to connect brands to audiences. And so if content is the vehicle, I would say promotion is the driver of that vehicle, right? So, you know, where's the vehicle going without the driver? You have to see the content. So the promotion literally takes us from point A, the audience, to point B, the brand's content. And we need that in order to drive that engagement, drive the right audience to the content. Then you have performance improve, and the two really kind of go together. Once you've gotten the audience to the content through promotion, then now it's time for the audience to take action. So the performance is really the action of the audience. They're spending time, they're reading, they're scrolling, they're clicking. But how do we know that that's actually happening? How do we know there's meaningful engagement taking place? Are you just going to take Tiffany's word for it? No, we actually have to show. I promise it happened. We actually have to provide proof through metrics, which has been, you know, a bit of a challenge in the industry for branded content, but it's really progressed over the last few years. And there's meaningful ways to showcase the effectiveness of content through metrics. And it's really important that we look beyond like standard metrics that we might be used to, like page views and impressions, because it's really about engagement.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so when we have like that engagement, how do we actually know that it's working? Do we have like some secret sauce that we have, or you know, some proprietary data that other people have? Or I know that you talk a lot about like it's the percentage and how long somebody views something, right? Is that correct? Yeah.
Yep. So there's secret sauce too, but but yeah. So engage view rate is one of the metrics that we use a lot, and there's also like scroll depth and active time, which are important engagement metrics. But engage view rate, or we call it EVR, tells us not just how many page views the content is getting, but how meaningful those page views are, by telling us the percentage of those page views where there was valuable time. There was an Ipsos study that revealed that content that had at least 10 seconds of active time, you could expect a brand lift. So that's the threshold we use for EVR. If there's been 10 seconds of viewership, then we count that as an engaged view. So I love that metric because it really provides insight into the quality of the view in the audience. We're not just promoting your content to any and everyone who's just coming and leaving. We're getting it to the right audience, and we can show that through our engaged view rate.
And which platforms do we typically utilize when which ones do you recommend? Like whether somebody works with us or they work with somebody else, you know, what platforms are we typically seeing this promoted content on?
Yeah, well, I would say it's most important to make sure it's a trusted platform. I think right now more than ever, you want to make sure you're aligning your brand with, a trusted platform. Because of the scale of our network, we primarily rely on our own owned and operated distribution methods for content promotion, which is a differentiator because as we've been talking about, we can speak to the quality of our audience. We know who we're reaching, and businesses can really trust where their content is being distributed. All of these promotional formats, like you see here on this slide, we have native placements on our home pages and section fronts. We also do social promotion from our Facebook channels, but it's still, from our publications. And it all works together to target the right audience and get them to the content. And then from there, there's opportunity for the reader to then go to the business or brand site, connecting the whole program together.
I love it. So everything comes full circle, and everybody knows that knows me that I love a good full funnel marketing circle. So I'm excited that this connects with it. And this is just one of the steps that can really help propel you into boosting your revenue for 2021. Thank you guys so much. I'm going to go ahead and bring Erin Green on, and she's going to actually talk a little bit about how we can advertise in a digital world. Thanks, Chris and Tiff. You guys are awesome. So hi, Erin. How are you?
Fantastic. Thanks for having me on.
Erin Green is one of the most intelligent women I've ever met, and also just knows everything there is, really, I like to believe in my mind, about digital advertising and advertising in a digital world. Because Erin, we're not in the same place that we were 5, 10, even 2 years ago, right? Where we're seeing content at lightning speeds. The customer journey is ever evolving and changing, and we're having to connect with people in different ways. And I think what happened in marketing is that we went from digitally marketing to now digitally marketing in a digital world, which is a little bit different. So you talk a little bit about the customer journey, how it's shifted, what we're seeing, and how it kind of comes full circle?
Yeah, the world has shifted dramatically, and there's, just to sort of start up, there's 2 places that you can think about that. One is think about how different your living room looks now than it did in, say, like 2005, right? Before, you would be like, oh, like if you weren't at home on Thursday at 7:30, friends skipped you, right? And now you're probably in your living room and you have your laptop and your phone, and the other people in your life all have their laptops and phones, and you're streaming something and you're all collectively watching television, right?
Mm-hmm.
And when we think about the customer journey, we try to put that at the center of all of our marketing programs, because the fact that you said at the very beginning of this, that people consume 7 to 10 pieces of content, 7 to 10 interactions, what that means is that it's mapping across a whole period of time as somebody is making decisions. And what you're seeing on the screen is one version of a customer journey of how somebody buys a car. I'll tell you quickly mine, right? My car, I had a Mustang that hit 100,000 miles. That was my trigger event, which is how all of these start. There's something that kicks somebody into it. And then I had to decide, am I going to get a mom car, or am I going to get the fastest car I can possibly afford? I wanted the fastest car I can possibly afford. And then I started sort of narrowing down, and I was on Google and I was searching for things, and got down to a few different cars. And I absolutely was asking my friends on Facebook for recommendations. All of my friends who were into cars were telling me and going for all different directions.
Right.
I was on YouTube. Absolutely, I was looking for, like lap times that different cars were able to do, and performance reviews, right? And really getting in deep. But did I make that decision immediately? Like, no, right? So if somebody moves from a trigger event, they move into a research phase, and then there's always a cooling off period, because that's an expensive, complex decision, and we're busy. There's a lot of things that are going on. But of course, like, I was getting retargeted with all sorts of ads and pushed in different directions. then we know that people ultimately move into an action phase, regardless of what product it is. And then it's about, well, where can I get the best price, and what dealership has the best credibility, and how can I validate that, and who's going to give me the best customer service? And I ultimately get my car. If you're curious what I bought, it was a 2016 Super Sport Camaro. And then the last phase that a lot of people ignore is that after somebody purchases, there's normally a sharing phase, right? Like if you buy something big and new and shiny, like you absolutely want to tell all of your friends about that. And what I would encourage you to do if you're watching this is to think about who is your customer and what is their journey and what are those 7 to 10 pieces of content? Because when you do that, the marketing jumps out at you. Right? You go, oh, that's why I need paid search. That's why I need to be on social. That's why I need to be on display. That's why I need to be on all of these different places. The other thing that I would just highlight is when we talk about a full funnel strategy, a good metaphor for that is that all of the marketing working together ends up being more than the sum of its parts. In the same way that when you put ingredients together and you bake a cake, you get something completely different. You get something magical and wonderful. That's what happens when you start layering different marketing tactics together.
Mike Akoff, I think, says that's definitely a mom car, Erin, for sure.
That's
but I can't agree with you. I can't agree with you more. And I love that you use the analogy. It's kind of like baking a cake, right? Without your eggs in your cake, you know, maybe the cake's not going to rise. So I think that what we're trying to paint the picture of here, guys, is that everybody's customer journey is a little bit different. What Erin may do may be a little bit different than what I may do, but we're still going to take several of the same actions. I'm still most likely going to go to Google first and search for something. So how does your business show up within the marketplace, and how do you get in front of people and capture those leads in these exact moments? What are some of the things that you can do? And what are some of the things that we can focus on in 2021 that we've learned from 2020 and the years before that are really shifting and changing, that are going to be really prominent within the marketplace? And I think one of those things is search marketing. I mean, I would say Google is my best friend. I talk to it on my phone. I write stuff in. My kid Googles. Like, talk to us a little bit about search marketing.
Yeah, so and we're going to be talking about 3 different products, and so I always try to have visual metaphors so that it'll stick in your head. And I want you to think about Google and search in general as kind of the 1,000-pound gorilla in the room. It's something that you absolutely have to deal with. You think about that real estate that Google holds in your life. It's the most competitive, most important piece of real estate that is available, and you need to be there. And it's because we have an oddly intimate relationship with Google. Google knows everything about us, right? So we know across all verticals. Like, for example, if somebody gets a serious medical diagnosis, the first thing that they do before they tell a friend or family or loved one or anything like that, they go to Google and they start researching that. All of those, right? Like all those little questions, all of those things, we go to Google first. And when we look at the consumer buying journey across the board, it ends up being the first thing that people go to, right? And then also we know that it ends up often being the last thing people do before they ultimately take action. So it's in 2 different places. It's on the research side and it's on the conversion side of things. So if you haven't jumped into the search space and thought about that, it's not just one gorilla, right? Like it's several, because it's Google and Yahoo and Bing and arguably YouTube. You need to think about that, and you have to deal with that because your competitors are absolutely there.
Absolutely. And I know that you talk a lot about how to be found on the internet, and that there are different types of search advertising and search marketing that can really capture leads for people. Can you talk a little bit about, you know, what some of those most prevalent forms of ad extensions are that people can utilize to kind of upsell, cross-sell, or be found even more on the internet?
Yeah, absolutely. And if you haven't lately, go and Google for something, but as opposed to just being intent driven, step back and just look at how the homepage of Google has changed for results. Because they're always making kind of tiny little changes, and a lot of times you don't necessarily think about it, but even from a few years ago, the way that results get displayed are radically different. You're going to know that there's the ad section, but one of the things that slipped in is Google shopping ads, right, have become huge because Google wants to compete with Amazon. I mean, you'll notice that there are ratings and reviews and credibility indicators that are built into that. Within the search ads, site links are something that have been around for a while, but there's different versions of that. There's app install links that absolutely there. People can dial your business directly from their mobile device. And then what you mentioned earlier is that you talk to Google, right? That relationship.
Yeah.
So search has been a huge thing. So you also have to think about what the audioscape of a Google landing page looks like whenever you're asking for things and how it's pushing things back, the snippets that pop up. And a lot of what we've talked about has just been on the paid side, but then there's the whole organic side of things, right? Like once you get below the map stack and the ads, then you get into all of the organic listings. So it's actually a very complex landscape, and it's worth your time to do a few searches and just look at what that looks like in your vertical, see who your competitors are and what sorts of things are popping up, because it's something that you're going to need to grapple with for 2021.
Yeah, and I think that even brings us to really our second point, right, which is kind of the elephant in the room. It's like, how do you show up in all of these diverse areas? So I know we talk a lot about like search, right, and that's usually the first place people go. But once people search, I know that in my next step in my journey, I'm going straight to Facebook and I'm going to start asking my friends for some advice, right? So I've recently have been under the weather, and I immediately went to Google, searched, diagnosed myself with 12 different diseases that I didn't even have, and then was like, this seems a little off. I think I'm going to go to Facebook. I'm going to start asking some people that I know on Facebook. And we know, like we talked about earlier, there's tons of users on the internet. And fun fact, 3.7 billion people have cell phones, over that 3.5 that only have toothbrushes. So we know that the world has really bad hygiene, but is really overly connected here within our social network. So how do we kind of partner those two together? Like, what does that landscape look like?
Yeah, so the joke that I always make, and it was funny back in the before times when we were doing the in-person events, is that during the course of this webinar, the majority of the people have already been on social at least once and popped on and looked at Facebook or Instagram or snapped something, right? Because it fills in all of the little gaps of time in our life. It owns the most time of anything that we do online. So Facebook and Instagram alone own what, like 1 in 5 internet minutes, and that was pre-pandemic. Mm-hmm. And then we saw time like skyrocket another 40 to 70% on top of that. So whenever you said it's the elephant in the room, you're right. Like it's this other huge thing that you need to deal with. One way to think about it is that, so Google is very intent driven, specifically with search. People are typing in keywords, they're running things down. Facebook and social and all of those platforms a lot more are, I look at them like a festival, right? Your friends are there, your family's there, there's entertaining things, there's funny things, but there's also the opportunity to buy things and to be influenced. People don't have necessarily a driving intent on social. Sure, it's for entertainment and it's to connect, but it's not as hyper-focused. And so if you're looking for a place to be able to influence people and to do really good demographic targeting, that's the place that you want to be.
Okay, awesome. And I know like we talk a lot about how organic social and paid social kind of go hand in hand, right? And I think oftentimes we forget about that. It's not just, you know, posting an ad and then being like, okay, peace out. I hope this ad performs really well. There's a science to it. There's a strategy to it. And there's different measurements of success. And I think that with more people online now more than ever, we're seeing that increase in consumer buying through social networks because people are spending so much time online trying to stay connected with one another, especially during this pandemic. And we're not going to see that drop off coming into the next few months as we enter into 2021. We're going to still need to be connected. And now we've just developed new habits and new views and new engagement metrics as we've gone through this crazy cycle of 2020, right? So can you talk a little bit about how the impact of your audience and customers vary on different platforms and how you can reach them, and what people kind of need to be looking for as far as that? I know we have up on the screen some measurements of success, but is there anything in particular that sticks out in your mind, Erin, as far as social media advertising?
Yeah, it's an overwhelming space, and it's a complex question, right? Because people will ask, you know, what should I be looking for and what are the most important metrics? And the most important metrics are going to be different to your business based on what you tell us, right? So if you're trying to grow a large organic social following, there's certain metrics that we're going to follow for that. Or if you're a quick cycle business and you're just trying to drive relevant traffic to that, we're going to have different metrics for that. One of the things that we talked about that I want to highlight though is how sophisticated the targeting has gotten on social. And so my quick side story for this is that my partner, she had her gaming computer blow up. She bought a brand new gaming laptop. And then when she got that, of course, she needed all the accessories. She needed the super fancy mouse. I don't know why you need an $80 mouse in order to you apparently do. And she also needed a gaming keyboard. And so as she was sitting there talking about this Razer keyboard with like the LED backlit display, I'm on Facebook. And within a couple of minutes, I started getting targeted for the competing brand for Razer keyboards, which is Steel. And that's because that's how fast social acts, right? Like it knows how to put people into in-market audiences for different things. And it knows that we share space, right? Both geographically and relationship-wise on Facebook, and it creates those groups. So I just want people to know that you have that level of targeting. And even if you think that your business is boring, right? If it's the flooring or garage, like there are people that are actively looking and need those things that are crucial to their lives, and you're able to get that on social. And if this seems overwhelming to you, this is absolutely something we can help you with to line out what your KPI should be and how to develop effective campaign.
Yeah, because no two business marketing mix is going to be the exact same. And what our goal is of the webinar today is to introduce you guys to what are the most prominent areas that we feel you should be focusing on as you move into 2021 and start developing that marketing strategy and outline. And I think that all of these pieces bring everything full circle, and social media is an animal. I mean, someone could tell you to post 12 times a day and the other person could say, oh no, one time is enough. And realistically, you don't really know what is going to work until you start observing that data and really listening to your audience and putting together a plan. We have somebody say that I always get so freaked out when I get Facebook ads pop up relevant to what I was just talking about or looking at. Yeah, I completely agree. My mom's been sending me like her list for what she wants for the holidays. And I'm like, Mom, where did you find this? It's like some random brand, which is great because I love to support local business owners, but I have no idea what she's telling me, like, oh, I found it on Instagram. Oh, okay. So you must have been searching for this, searching for things like this all the time. So we're getting a lot of questions in the chat. I'm going to go with Michael Coffees. It says algorithms on social media platforms are always changing. Do you follow those?
I do look into that. There's actually a person named Dennis Wilson who is deep in there, and we should absolutely have him on another webinar to talk about like the granularity of all of the different things with the algorithms. I saw one of the questions go by, and people, I hear this a lot, and they're like, is Facebook listening to me, and how are they able to be so predictive? I want you to know that there's not a setting in the back end whenever you're selecting ads to be able to target by voice search. And in the terms of service, it says that it is not doing that. I think the creepy factor that you're experiencing is that the algorithms are getting so good at predicting your behavior, and we can't fathom that it could be that good. But I've done some tests with friends where we picked completely erroneous phrases like that we would never other say and haven't gotten served for those ads. But it is pulling in as much data as it can, right? It's pulling in your website behavior, the words that you're using on instant messenger, the relationships between all of the people that are in your groups. It's pulling in a lot, but it's not actively listening to your voice.
Absolutely. And so that kind of takes us to like display advertising, right? It's like the next thing on the list. Like we see it all the time. We're seeing them on websites. We're seeing that we're placing them on our own. We're putting them in blogs. We're seeing them on social. Can you touch briefly on why display advertising works, Erin? As we just have a couple minutes left on the webinar, I want to make sure that we get to this for sure.
Yeah, well, I'll be real quick. The way that you should be thinking about display advertising, if we had the gorilla and the elephant, display advertising is the ocean. It's the rest of the internet, right? Like it's all of the websites we're going to, all of the apps that we're going to, and it's the destination that people are trying to get to when they flow through Google. And so do you want to be in front of those people? Yes, absolutely, right? Do you want to be there whenever they're actively researching the thing that you sell and they're on those websites? Do you want to be able to put your brand there? Yes. There are a ton of really cool things that you can do with display advertising. I'm going to talk about one of probably the 20 different tactics, which if you're not aware of it, we do addressable geofencing. And so because of the pandemic and people haven't been out as much, we have a technology that allows you to literally identify households and draw digital fences around them and serve them the equivalent of a digital direct mail ad. I had somebody recently ask me for, they wanted motorcycle owners with 4 times the discretionary income of the national average with travel credit cards and specific geographies. And it came back with, here are the households of that population. You can absolutely reach those. So that's one of many really cool things you can do with display. And we'd be happy to help map that out for you too.
Yeah, and I think that the biggest takeaway, you guys, that we're looking for you to take away from this webinar today is we've thrown a lot of information out there. We've thrown out branded content. We've thrown out social media advertising, display advertising, search advertising. The biggest thing is that your marketing mix is your own, and what may work for your business may not work for your neighbor's business. What may work for Sam in New York may not work for Susan in Texas. But what you want to do is you want to allow data to really dictate itself, and you want to make sure that you're partnering with the right team of people that can help you understand that data and not just say, oh, well, we've got this, we're going to do this for you. So Erin, what would you say everyone's next steps are for the webinar today as we start to come to an end, come to a close?
What I say is that when you're on these webinars, we know that people retain roughly 10% of the stuff that we say. But hopefully you'll remember how we made you feel and that you have confidence and excitement in your marketing plan for 2021. But if you don't have a marketing plan on paper, if you haven't lined out who your target customers are, how they buy things, and have a media plan that supports that entire process, in the environment that we have stepped to into the business world, you absolutely need that. And that's something that we will do for you for free. That is worth thousands of dollars that we will just do for free. We'll map all that out for you, and we would love to have that conversation. Hopefully, as you were going through this presentation, you were like, oh, well, how would this fit for my business? Or how would this work? And we want to take all this information, knowing that you probably only got 10% of it's really going to stick, and make sure that we apply 100% of that to your business and map it all out for you.
Perfect. Thank you guys. I couldn't have said it any better myself. If you guys are interested in having your business reviewed for free and a strategy put together for you, there'll be a questionnaire right after this call that you can just click yes, and we'll make sure that we get that handled. And you guys will all receive a copy of the webinar and the workbook today and tomorrow as we send those emails out. Thank you guys so much. Thank you to everybody that was on the call. Thank you to Erin, Tiffanie, and Chris. We appreciate you guys, and have a wonderful, wonderful day. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Bye, guys. And